My name's Darren Le Baron and I teach and educate people about mushrooms. The space of mushrooms, what got me to the space of mushrooms? Life. I've been on a journey of just trying to work myself out. And when I say that, just like knowledge of self, trying to explore who and what and why I'm here, that type of questioning. And over the years of exploring different, what I say, educational as well as healing modalities, I came across mushrooms as a tangible way and a solution actually, which I would now say has been the key to my understanding who I am, what I'm doing here, and life in general. So I was actually giving a presentation on, well, titled, "You Are a Mushroom Having a Human Experience." And I'm out here, as I say, just doing the mushrooms bidding, trying to share with people their connection to mushrooms and fungi, this organism that started from way out there beyond and is here now, and that we're just extensions of this kind of extraterrestrial mushroom project. Sure, so basically the origins of mushrooms in their form as spores arrived to Earth on spaceships. As I say, UFOs, aka IFOs, because we have identified that these flying objects were meteorites and asteroids, and they housed passengers. Those passengers were spores and other bacteria that kick-started life here on planet Earth. And what we know as Earth today hasn't always been Earth. And what do I mean by that? When they arrived, it was just rock. It was a rock planet. It was the third rock from the sun. And the spores and the mycelium have broken down the rock to actually create the first layers of soil. And those first layers of soil produced the first plants. 500 million years later, then a few million years later, we came out of the soil as well as what we call human beings. So we're just an extension of this, as I say, extraterrestrial project. So yeah, basically the mushrooms in their spore form arrived to Earth on their spaceships, which were basically UFOs, aka IFOs, because we have identified that these flying objects were asteroids and meteorites, and they basically housed passengers, which were the spores as well as other bacteria and other key forms or organisms that kick-started life on planet Earth. And when they arrived on their form of spores and landed on this planet Earth, it wasn't as green and lush as we see it is around us now. It was a rock planet, the third rock from the sun, as the TV show reminds us. And spores broke down, as well as the mycelium broke down the rock to create the first layers of soil. So when mushrooms eat rock, they shit out soil. And this soil then allowed the first primitive plants to evolve 500 million years later. And then a few million years later, humans came out of the soil too. So my workshop is basically just sharing with people that we're an extension of this extraterrestrial project, and we're connected to mushrooms and mycelium, and we're out here just doing the mushrooms bidding, whether we know it or not, or like it or not. I think festivals like Medicine Festival are really important. Why? Because they're like role-playing mushrooms. They bring people together, they make mycelium connections, and they spread information like spores, what spores do. So they're spreading information and knowledge, bringing people together. And obviously it's multiple faceted, meaning like there's, I'm here talking about mushrooms, there's drumming workshops, there's people here talking about yoga and offering different healing modalities. And for me, that's really important in the here and now, just because everybody, just like mushrooms, are different, and many people need different forms of healing. So to be able to have that in one space, in such an amazing space, for me, like, just does what is needed to be done in the here and now. And it's like, for me, it's like really peaceful. I do festivals, I do quite a lot of festivals, and there's a lot of festivals just like kind of energy, and this has got a more relaxing, peaceful energy. I don't know what it's going to be like later on this evening, but for the most part, yeah, it's a good vibe. There's a good vibe and energy here. At this point, I would probably say, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really see mushrooms as an intelligent entity. It's a form, that comes from the unseen and comes into the seen form, and it allows us access to that unseen. It allows us to see things we don't normally see or understand. So for me, yeah, it definitely has that potential. Like there's a saying or an intelligence that we understand, principles relating to as above, so below, as within, so without. I say that to say that the way that the mycelium works in the soil, it allows itself as well as other organisms that come from the soil to communicate. So you mentioned, this humongous fungus that's in the United States of America. It's connected. It's connected to the same mycelium, and yet it allows the mushrooms themselves to communicate, but it also communicates with the trees. And I often say, we are communicating with these same organisms as well. Some of us consciously do it, but the fact that we breathe and interact with them on a unconscious level, or we just do these things, we can be more intentional around it. This central nervous system that is in the soil is inside of us, and it works in the same way. And I really do feel that if we're more conscious around our communications, we can actually communicate and make the world a better place. My medicine is life. So if I was to, you know, like, it's interesting when we talk about medicine, because I always highlight, in particular with mushrooms. So one, I always like to highlight that mushrooms are just that, mushrooms, that they're not plants, one. Two, I know we're into this plant medicine thing or space, but I always like to highlight that mushrooms are not medicine. They can be used as a medicine, but that's not their be-all and end-all. They didn't arrive to this place and space as a medicine. And even people who use psychedelic mushrooms, for example's sake, when you go to indigenous places and spaces where people who utilize this stuff, who are gifted this technology, they also don't refer to it as a medicine. You know, it's used as medicine at times, but primarily they use it as a tool for navigating. Navigating where? The unseen realms. It's a tool for them to communicate with their ancestors, to communicate with their guides, to communicate with nature. It's a technology. That's how I like to refer to mushrooms, as an organic technology. So my main message, what I'm bringing to Medicine Festival, is that your mushrooms having a human experience. And I know to some people it sounds really far-fetched, but you know, if you kind of hone it in, you know, and we just look at things like we breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide, that's exactly what mushrooms do. And some people say, oh, we do what mushrooms do. And that's just that. If you look at the fact that we can see mushrooms as this living and breathing organism that we can start to build a relationship with, that is an intelligence. It's an intelligence from the soil, and we're from the soil. So the same thing that makes the soil work makes us work. And if we work with mushrooms in that way, we can become more intelligent. That's the message that I'm trying to share with people ultimately. And as you start to see some of these similarities that we have with mushrooms, where we're the same or very similar, you will start to align yourself. And like I tell folks, role play, man. If you can't see it yet, just role play like a mushroom, and you're going to become smarter. You'll be a smarter human being, because we know what human beings are doing right now on the planet. Not a great, you know, the impact that we're having is more negative. And mushrooms in their sustainable approach will allow us to be more sustainable and work with the planet rather than against it. That's my message.